Hi, my name is J Patterson, and in this lecture I want to introduce the idea of validation tools that help you to check whether the files that you have written are well-formed XML and HTML. So basically the idea here is that if you're writing small files, few 5, 10 lines long, and you're writing them in XML, it's pretty easy to know whether or not it's well-formed. Just follow the basic rules of well-formedness. For example, making sure that there's one root tag, making sure that all the tags are nested, making sure that the tags are case sensitive, making sure that there's an opening and a closing tag always coming in pairs, making sure that any special characters have been escaped in the data tag. And if you don't have any schemas, that's kind of all there is to it. Pretty simple. Until you start getting into large documents. When your documents start getting large, when they start to span multiple lines of code, when a parent node has hundreds or thousands of child nodes, and each one of those child nodes has more and more nodes, it becomes very difficult to know whether or not you're writing well-formed XML, and if you have a schema, whether or not that well-formed XML is also valid according to that schema. And because of that, it's really helpful to be able to use a validation tool in order to make sure that your code is well written, that your file is well written. On top of that, these validation tools also typically will make your code look better. They'll do the indentation correctly and make the spacing work out okay. Broadly speaking, this style of online tool, or the style of tool in general, is called a lint tool, L-I-N-T. And you use these tools in order to check the formatting of any kind of data file that you might have. They exist for XML, they exist for HTML, they exist for CSS, they exist for JSON and YAML and all kinds of different data formats that are out there. But what I would like to do is just show you a couple examples of online tools that will help you check your XML and check your HTML. They're easy enough to find. If you just search in a web browser for XML Online Validator, you'll find a lot of them. Same with HTML. Or XML lint tool is another thing that you can search for. Now, the only thing to be cautious of is when you use an online web service tool and you upload your data in order to validate that it's well formed, that website has access to your data. You're giving your data to that website. So in the context of a class or just a toy example, that's not a big deal. But you want to be very careful that you don't upload data that has sensitive information in it or secret information in it, because that web service is going to have access to it. And there's no guarantees that they're not keeping a copy or evaluating it. So let me go to a different kind of screencast here and walk through some examples of me using some of these tools. Okay, so we're going to go to a tool, an online tool for formatting and validating the XML. So let's start by going to the website. This one is www.freeformatter.com, and it has an XML formatter in addition to a lot of other tools here, that a lot of other styles of formatting and validation. If I take some messy XML over here on the right, this is the cookbook XML, and I put it in here. This happens to be well-formed XML. And I ask it to format it. It's going to do a really nice job of taking that XML, formatting it for me with the indentations reflecting the hierarchy that's present. I can copy it and then put it back in my document. Get a nice, much cleaner representation. Now that's going to choke if there's not an error, but there's a separate tool here for specifically for doing the validation. So if you come up here and you switch to the XML validator, it'll allow you to do a schema if you want, but let's just throw some errors in here so that we can see how the validator works. Collect it all, cut and paste into the document, say validate, gives me a list of errors. It says the element type rtype must be terminated by something else. It says line 14, so I go to line 14, and it shows me that the end of the chunk that needed to be closed by this tag was not there. And you can see you could fix that two ways. You could make the close tag like this, or you could make the open tag like this. So let's fix that one. And then it says I guess that's it. That's all it says for that one. So it didn't catch everything, so I'm going to do it, copy it and paste it again till we get through the entire thing. It says book must be terminated. Book's not terminated because I forgot a K. Good. Let's shift that to capital B and see if it checks capital letters. Copy it. Didn't recognize capital B as being the same tag, which is correct, XML, which is the correct way to validate XML. Paste it, and now we got a valid XML document. So that's a way that we can validate the XML that we have. Now, something slightly different I did is I went and I grabbed the podcast feed, the RSS feed for This American Life, which is a podcast that is put out by NPR. And you can see over on the right that it's super messy, but you can kind of see there's some XML there. So I'm just going to copy it all, go to my XML formatter, and I'm going to paste it in there. I'm going to format it. So you can see it passed the formatting, and it cleaned it all up. So I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and then I'm just going to close this browser. Come over to my text document. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to paste back the correctly formatted XML, which happens to be an RSS feed. And if you go down this, now that it's cleaned up, you can see all kinds of interesting things. Like you can see the title of the podcast, and you can see the title of different episodes that were aired. You can even dig in here and see, let's see if I can find it. Looking for, yeah, here you go. Here's the MP3 file right there. MP3 file for one of the episodes. If you wanted to download the MP3 file, it's available. So this is the RSS feed. This is how podcasts are published, and it's XML. If you can get a hold of it and you can use a beautifier, then you can learn some stuff. So great. So that's XML. All right, now let's look at a pretty good way to check your HTML formatting and validation. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the W3C validation site. So this is a standards body that, until it became a living document, was a great place to check the various versions of HTML. So I've got over on my right some basic simple HTML, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to validate it by direct input. So drop it in there and hit check. It'll go through and check whether it's well formed or not. It is well formed. It doesn't, however, validate because a couple things. It says consider adding a language tab to the HTML attribute to the HTML, and head is missing a required instance of child element title. All right, so let me try that. Let me add the language attribute and set that equal to English, and then let me add the title. Select everything and put it in there again. And what do I get? Document checking completed, no errors or warnings to show. So this is a validator.w3.org is a good web page to go to check some of those different aspects of your document out. And yep, it doesn't do the formatting though, as you can see. It leaves it all messy. So for that, you could go back to our free formatting tool and go to your HTML formatter. And after you've validated it, you can drop it in here and format it, and it formats it nicely. Copy to clipboard, drop it back in here, and this tool also has a validator, although it's not the official validator, but it probably works just fine. Let's give it a shot. Character encoding was not declared, proceeding using Windows 12.52. Okay, so we could declare a character encoding. We do that with a meta tag, and I think it is char set equals UTF-8. I think that's how we would do that. There you go, and now it conforms and valid, and it conforms to best practices and standards. So great. That's an example of using a combination of tools to make sure you've got some good HTML and good XML. And one thing that's great about using these tools is not only does it validate your HTML and tell you whether it's working or not, but you also learn things along the way. Like, for example, to
put a title tag in or to add a language to your HTML tag as well. Great, thanks.
All right, thank you for your attention.